Welcome to the OnlyFans Secrets Marketing Podcast. The goal of this podcast is to help both new and established OnlyFans creators learn the basics of online branding, marketing, and promotion to help you make more money with your content and maximize your time online. My name is Richard Lewis, and I have over 20 years of internet marketing experience. So let's get started with today's topic. That topic is OnlyFans Secure the Bag Icons, Mary Kay Ash. All right, I'm continuing my series on icons that we can learn a great deal from as far as securing your bag for the long term on OnlyFans. The icon I'm going to speak about this week is Mary Kay Ash, the founder of Mary Kay Cosmetics. Okay, so who is Mary Kay Ash and why should you care about her? All right, so she is a businesswoman, entrepreneur, mentor, and groundbreaker. She was born Mary Kathleen Wagner in Hot Wells, Texas in 1918. She got married at the age of 17, having 3 children. Her husband went to World War II, and while he was there, she sold books door to door. And when he came back from the war, she divorced in 1945. So she went on to work for Stanley Home Products, and she was passed over for promotion by a male colleague whom she trained. So she ended up retiring in 1963. So she intended to write a book in 1963 to help women in business. So what happened was that book turned into a business plan that became Mary Kay Cosmetics. So she was remarried at the time. So she was working with her husband and to get the business started. And so 1 month after launching that business, he died of a heart attack. So at that point, she asked her sons for help, one of which gave her a loan of $5,000, and the other, her youngest, Richard, took her late husband's place, helping her with the business. At this point, she was 45 years old. So she used the house party model that at the time was very popular by Tupperware, but no one had really used it for cosmetics before. So what would happen was a Mary Kay rep would invite her friends over for free facials, and they would sell products at that point. So you'd get the free facial, but then it was your friend, so you'd want to buy something from that person. This has been used now over and over again, but it was a pretty new concept in the late 50s and early 1960s. So what she did was she focused on making her saleswomen more profit than her competitors. So at the time, she had a major competitor, Avon, which is still around. But she made sure that her salespeople made more money per unit. And she loved to mentor, referring to her mentees as her daughters. So as of 2014, there were 3 million consultants worldwide and sales of $3 billion. So Mary Kay has obviously since passed on since she was born in 1918, but the company that she founded continues to this day and continues to thrive. So we can learn a lot from that particular story. But I want to go into some quotes, that she made herself. One of which is, if you think you can, you can. And if you think you can't, you're right. So that's a great quote. It's basically saying that your mind is what decides whether or not you can succeed or not. And you will always find the right answer in your mind in reality. If you're telling yourself, I can get this done, then it's going to get done. But be positive that if you say, I can't get this done, it's not going to get done. And then another quote of hers is, most people live and die with their music still unplayed, and they never dare to try. So for a lot of people, they have skills, they have dreams, but much like a guitar sitting in the closet, it never gets played. If you take it out of the closet and you put it right next to your bed, I guarantee sometimes you're going to end up playing that guitar. So by daring to try, she's saying they don't ever dare to try. And that's why the music goes unplayed. And then she said, a mediocre idea that generates enthusiasm will go further than a great idea that inspires no one. So what you have here is that a decent idea with a lot of pip and vigor and a lot of hard work will go much farther than one that's great, but no one really works it and cares about it. So Mary Kay's story can teach us a lot. I think her story is more impactful than necessarily the quotes. Last time, the icon Zig Ziglar, we talked more about what he quoted, what he said. But I think her story is more inspiring as far as how you can, gain from it. So what can we learn from Mary Kay's story? So her circumstances create opportunities. They created opportunities for her. So her circumstances, even the bad ones, created opportunity. So at different points, she could have looked at the different setbacks and just curled into a ball, which a lot of people end up wanting to do. She was in a circumstance, you can imagine, although it was more common in the 1930s and the 1940s to get married at a young age. She still is someone who's 17. She likely had all three of those children in her early 20s. Her husband goes off to war. And she still, even in 1945, which obviously is a very different time as far as equal rights are concerned for women. So you have limited amounts of opportunities that she could get to go and work. But she still found something like selling books door to door to do. Now, what's really interesting about selling books door to door is if you read a lot of business books, you'll find that a lot of people who were successful in sales started out with door to door selling. Door to door selling helps you with the big thing, which is rejection. And, once a lot of these people moved from door to door selling and they could jump on a telephone, and that's even less rejection, they did even better because, you start there face to face with other people and you're able to, learn a lot about people. So I think that is a small snippet in her story, but one that's very telling, that she was able to go door to door, and likely she met a lot of other mothers, a lot of other women, married women, and so she got a feel for those people. And I think that's really important. I think it's important for you to get a feel for your potential clients, who they are, what they want and what they need. And I think that she gained a lot from that experience going door to door, especially during World War II, when you can assume that a lot of men were off at war. So she was encountering a lot of women. And I think that probably helped inspire her a lot, because at the time you would imagine that when she went to work in the 50s and the 60s, even after her divorce, there would have been primarily men there working. So she had that opportunity to meet women door to door during the war. Now, it's also really interesting that she divorced in 1945. Divorce was not very common in the 1940s. This would have been kind of scandalous at the time for her to be a divorcee, which, although that sounds kind of silly and by today's standards, being a divorcee, people wouldn't invite you around because you could be considered lewd and, just by that fact. So the fact that she was a divorcee for quite a long time is interesting as well. So, you're not going to get the kind of social invites you might if you were, part of that standard that people wanted to hold up in the 1940s and the 50s. So it's interesting as well that she went on to work for a home products company. That's huge. Again, she is taking what she knows. So she's going from, and it didn't say, more about Stanley Home Products, but you can get the feel that Stanley Home Products had the kind of business similar to what she was trying to sell, products that were at home. So it's interesting that she's able to get that kind of experience. And then, the fact that she was passed over for promotion by someone that she trained, especially a male in 1963, very common that the entire echelon of, top management at a company would be male, and that no one would bat an eye at that. If they'd actually end up probably batting an eye if she had been promoted to that position, that would have caused more of an issue. So her ending up deciding again to retire in 1963 and just say, to retire at what we're looking at 44 or 45 years old. No one really retires in 1963 at 45. So I think that's a nice way of saying she just got out of there because she didn't feel comfortable there. And what's interesting is obviously she had the entrepreneurial spirit that she said, well, if you're not going to do it the right way, I'm going to go do it the right way. And I think that her intent to write the book to help people, again, we went over the last time with the other icon, Zig Ziglar, if you help other people get what they want, you'll get what you want. And I think that she had that spirit in herself because she wanted to write a book to help women in business, because the only way to change the system that she saw was to empower more women in regards to business. Now, the fact that the book turned into a business plan for Mary Kay Cosmetics is interesting. So she's writing the book and she's getting ideas, lots of ideas to help others. But then she's realizing that how she can help the most people is by starting her own business and then promoting, women within that business to become their own bosses. And it's interesting because I'll bring up some rare history, some random history on this podcast. But, one of the big reasons for the Renaissance in Europe was the Black Plague. And the reason is because so many people died from the Black Plague that the feudal lords, they needed the workers. They needed people to get work done. It was a limited amount of people. So those limited amount of people then realized that they could become entrepreneurs and that they could charge a higher price to the feudal lords for what was needed by them. And up until that point, they weren't needed. They didn't know. But once they knew that they could have that power, then they started asking for more and more power. And then you went from the Renaissance to the Enlightenment. And it's very similar here, that someone like Mary Kay is taking this concept and she's saying, okay, to the women at her time, you can you can run your own business.